I'm going to tell you something that completely changed how I think about container gardening. 3 years ago, I went through a difficult period in my life. Family health issues, work stress, and honestly, I just couldn't keep up with my garden anymore. I had about 15 containers on my patio, filled with what I thought were tough perennials. I basically abandoned them for almost 3 months. No watering, no fertilizing, no attention whatsoever. When I finally came back to check on them, I expected complete devastation. Dead plants, empty pots, months of work destroyed. But what I found shocked me to my core. Some of those plants weren't just alive, they were thriving. They looked better than when I was fussing over them every single day. And that's when everything I thought I knew about container gardening was wrong. Most gardening advice tells you that container plants need constant attention. Daily watering, weekly fertilizing, regular deadheading, constant monitoring. And for some plants, that's absolutely true. But there's a secret category of perennials that actually prefer being ignored. Plants that evolved in harsh conditions, where neglect isn't a death sentence, it's their natural habitat. Today, I'm sharing the 10 container perennials that survived my 3 months of complete abandonment. These aren't just survivors. These are plants that become more beautiful, more resilient, and more impressive the less you fuss over them. If you're someone who travels frequently, works long hours, forgets to water, or simply doesn't want gardening to become another exhausting chore, these 10 plants will transform your container gardens. Before I reveal these neglect-proof champions, I need you to do something. Hit that subscribe button and tap that notification bell. I release content every single week that will save you time, money, and frustration in your garden. And drop a comment telling me the longest you've ever forgotten to water a plant. I want to hear your plant neglect confessions. Trust me, I won't judge. I've been there. Now, the plant at number 1 on this list survived something I still can't believe. I'll tell you exactly what happened when we get there. But first, let's start with number 10 and work our way up to the ultimate neglect champion. Number 10 is catmint, specifically the variety Walker's Low. This plant forms billowing clouds of lavender blue flowers that bloom from late spring all the way through fall. That's nearly 6 months of continuous color from a plant that genuinely prefers being ignored. Here's what makes catmint remarkable for busy gardeners. It's drought tolerant to an almost ridiculous degree. During my 3 months of neglect, my catmint received 0 supplemental water. 0. It survived entirely on whatever rain happened to fall, and it was a dry summer. When I came back, it was covered in flowers, and the bees were going absolutely crazy over it. The secret to catmint's resilience is its Mediterranean origins. This plant evolved in regions where summer drought is normal and water is scarce. Rich, moist soil actually makes catmint weak and floppy. Poor soil and dry conditions make it compact, sturdy, and incredibly floriferous. Care couldn't be simpler. Plant it in full sun, use well-draining soil, and essentially leave it alone. The only maintenance catmint truly needs is 1 hard cutback per year. In mid-July, after the first flush of blooms, grab your head shears and cut the entire plant back by half. That's it. Within 2 weeks, fresh growth emerges and you get a complete second wave of flowers that lasts until frost. Money-saving tip 1. 1 catmint plant spreads to about 3 feet wide within 2 years. You can divide it in early spring, creating multiple plants for free. I started with 3 catmint plants 5 years ago. I now have 11, and I've given away at least a dozen to neighbors and friends.
Number 9 is sedum, also called stonecrop, and specifically the upright varieties like Autumn Joy or Matrona. These succulent perennials store water in their thick, fleshy leaves, like built-in reservoirs. When you forget to water, they simply tap into their reserves and keep growing. I documented this during my neglect period. My sedum containers went 75 days without a single drop of water. 75 days. When I finally checked on them, the leaves were slightly less plump than usual, but the plants were completely healthy. I gave them 1 deep watering, and within a week, they looked like nothing had happened. Sedum actually produces more vibrant colors when slightly underwatered. The stress intensifies the pigments in the leaves, creating deeper purples, richer reds, and more dramatic color contrasts. Gardeners who water their sedum regularly often end up with greener, less colorful plants. Your neglect literally makes them more beautiful. The flowers appear in late summer and fall, flat clusters of pink that age to burgundy and eventually bronze. Even after the blooms fade, the dried seed heads provide winter interest and food for birds. You get 4-season value from a plant that requires almost nothing from you. Pro trick that took me years to learn: never fertilize sedum. Rich nutrients make them grow lush and green, but the stems become weak and floppy, often splitting open in the center. Lean soil and zero fertilizer produces compact, sturdy plants with brilliant color. Number 8 is lavender, and I know what you're thinking. Lavender is fussy, lavender is difficult, lavender always dies in my garden. But here's the truth nobody tells you. Lavender is only difficult when you give it too much love. Lavender evolved on rocky, dry hillsides in the Mediterranean. It thrives in poor soil, blazing sun, and weeks without water. The problems start when gardeners treat it like a typical perennial, giving it rich soil, regular water, and fertilizer. That kindness kills lavender faster than neglect ever could. In containers, lavender becomes nearly bulletproof because you control the drainage completely. Mix extra perlite or coarse sand into your potting mix. Use containers with multiple drainage holes. Place it in the hottest, sunniest spot you have. Then, basically ignore it, except during extreme drought. My lavender containers survived the 3-month neglect test with flying colors. They actually looked better than the previous year when I was watering them weekly. The plants were more compact, the foliage was more silver, and the fragrance was more intense. Less water equals more aromatic oils. That's the science. Here's the variety secret. English lavender is the hardiest, surviving down to zone 5 and returning reliably for years. Phenomenal is my favorite variety because it handles humidity better than most, which matters if you live somewhere with sticky summers. Hidcote and Munstead are classics that stay compact, perfect for containers. Number 7 is Russian sage, a plant so tough that it borders on indestructible. This woody perennial grows 3 to 4 feet tall with silvery gray foliage and airy spikes of lavender blue flowers from midsummer through fall. The entire plant is aromatic, releasing a pleasant sage-like scent when touched. Russian sage laughs at conditions that would kill most perennials. Full blazing sun? Perfect. Weeks without water? No problem. Poor rocky soil? Even better. Heat waves that make you want to stay indoors? Russian sage just keeps flowering without complaint. During my neglect period, my Russian sage containers received no water, no attention, no care whatsoever. When I returned, they were at peak bloom, absolutely covered in those ethereal blue flowers, humming with bees and butterflies. It was honestly one of the most beautiful things in my entire garden, and I had done absolutely nothing to make it happen.
The only maintenance Russian sage requires is one hard pruning in late winter. Cut it back to about 6 inches above the soil before new growth starts. This seems brutal, but it's necessary. Without this annual cutback, the stems become woody and unproductive, and the plant loses its shape. Money-saving reality. Russian sage is expensive when bought as a mature plant, often $30 to $40 at nurseries, but it grows fast from small starts. Buy the smallest, cheapest plant you can find, give it 1 season, and you'll have a specimen that looks like you paid premium prices. Number 6 is daylilies, specifically repeat-blooming varieties like Stella d'Oro or Happy Returns. These are the workhorses of low-maintenance gardening, producing flowers for months with essentially zero care required. Each individual flower lasts only 1 day, which is where the name comes from. But established plants produce so many buds that you get continuous bloom from June through September. Some varieties even push out occasional flowers into October if the weather cooperates. Daylilies survived my neglect test easily. They're adapted to both drought and flooding, which is an unusual combination. They tolerate a wide range of soil types. They grow in full sun or partial shade. They're basically impossible to kill unless you try really hard. Here's what the nurseries won't tell you. Daylilies actually bloom better when slightly stressed. A little drought, a little competition, even some crowding in the container. It all triggers more flower production. Happy, pampered daylilies often produce more foliage and fewer flowers. A little benign neglect shifts energy from leaves to blooms. The multiplication factor is incredible. Daylilies spread through underground divisions, and after 3 or 4 years, one plant becomes a thick clump that can be divided into multiple plants. My original 3 daylilies have become 15, all from division, all completely free. Number 5 is coneflower, Echinacea, and this native North American perennial is one of my absolute favorites for containers. Those bold purple petals surrounding spiky orange centers are instantly recognizable, and they bloom for months without any deadheading required. But here's the secret most gardeners don't know. You shouldn't deadhead coneflowers, ever. Those dried seed heads provide food for goldfinches all winter long. I've watched flocks of them cling to the stems in January, snow falling around them, happily eating seeds from my neglected containers. Coneflowers are native to prairie regions, where conditions are harsh and resources are scarce. They've evolved to handle heat, cold, drought, poor soil, and pretty much anything else you throw at them. Container growing suits them perfectly because it mimics those lean, challenging conditions. The variety Magnus is what you want. Flowers 4 to 5 inches across, strong stems that don't need staking, and incredible drought tolerance. Plant it, water it initially to establish roots, then step back and let it do its thing. Number 4 is hens and chicks, sempervivum, a succulent that's essentially immortal in containers. These plants form perfect rosettes that look like living roses crafted from jade. The hen is the mother plant, and the chicks are babies that emerge around the edges, eventually forming their own rosettes. Here's what makes hens and chicks extraordinary. They literally cannot be over-neglected. I have containers of hens and chicks that haven't been watered in years. Years. They survive entirely on rainfall, morning dew, and their own water reserves stored in those thick leaves. During my 3-month neglect test, my hens and chicks containers looked identical when I returned. Maybe slightly more colorful from the drought stress, but completely healthy and actually producing more chicks than usual. The stress triggered their survival response, which includes rapid reproduction. The variety range is stunning.
Some are bright lime green, others deep burgundy. Some have fuzzy textures, others are smooth and waxy. Cobweb hens and chicks look like they're covered in delicate spider webs. You can create entire container gardens using nothing but different hens and chicks varieties. They're cold hardy to ridiculous extremes, surviving temperatures that would kill most plants instantly. They thrive in shallow containers where other perennials would starve. And they multiply constantly, giving you free plants to expand your collection or share with friends. Number 3 is yarrow, Achillea, a native wildflower that produces flat-topped clusters of flowers in shades of yellow, gold, red, pink, and white. It blooms from early summer through fall when deadheaded, and the ferny, aromatic foliage stays attractive all season. Here's the counterintuitive secret about yarrow. It blooms better in terrible soil. Rich, amended soil makes yarrow produce lush foliage but sparse flowers. It also causes weak stems that flop over in rain. But poor, lean soil? Yarrow rewards that with compact growth, sturdy stems, and flowers absolutely everywhere. This plant evolved on dry prairies where nutrients are scarce and competition is fierce. Your neglectful container environment is actually luxury compared to its natural habitat. Less is genuinely more with yarrow. Drought tolerance is exceptional. I've watched yarrow go semi-dormant during extreme heat, slow in growth but never dying. Once temperatures moderate and rain returns, it bounces back and starts flowering again like nothing happened. The variety Moonshine has silvery foliage and pale yellow flowers that look sophisticated in any setting. Paprika has warm red flowers that age to softer shades. Both stay compact enough for containers and spread slowly to fill their space without becoming invasive. Number 2 is Black-Eyed Susan, Rudbeckia, those cheerful golden yellow flowers with dark centers that absolutely everyone recognizes. These native perennials bloom from midsummer through fall, providing reliable color during the hottest, most challenging months of the growing season. Black-eyed Susans thrive on neglect because they evolved in conditions where neglect is the default. Native to prairies with scorching summers, periodic droughts, and no supplemental irrigation, they're genetically programmed to handle tough situations. During my neglect period, my Black-eyed Susan containers kept blooming. While other plants were struggling, these workhorses produced flower after flower without any care from me whatsoever. When I finally returned, they were at peak bloom and covered in butterflies. Modern compact varieties like Goldsturm or Little Gold Star are perfect for containers. They stay manageable in size while producing dozens of flowers per plant. The blooms last well in heat, the plants handle drought once established, and they self-seed to give you volunteer seedlings in surprising places. Money-saving tip: let some flowers dirt a seed at the end of the season. Those dried seed heads provide food for goldfinches and other birds, and they'll drop seeds that germinate into free plants next spring. One container purchase becomes a perpetual source of new Black-eyed Susans. And finally, number 1, the ultimate neglect champion, the plant that survived something I still can't fully believe. Snake plant, Sansevieria. I know what you might be thinking. That's a houseplant. But snake plants thrive outdoors in containers during warm months, and what they can survive is absolutely extraordinary. Here's what happened during my 3-month neglect. My snake plant containers were on the east side of my patio, receiving morning sun and afternoon shade. I abandoned them in early June. Summer temperatures hit 90 degrees multiple times. There were heat waves where it didn't rain for 3 weeks straight. I didn't water once, not once. When I returned in early September, I expected the worst. Snake plants store water in their thick leaves, but 3 months with no water in summer heat? That seemed impossible to survive. Every single plant was not just alive, but actively producing new growth. Fresh green spears were emerging from the soil. The existing leaves were slightly thinner than usual, but completely healthy. I watered them deeply, and within 2 weeks, they looked like they'd been pampered all summer. Snake plants use a special type of photosynthesis called CAM, which means they keep their pores closed during the day to conserve water and only open them at night. This makes them extraordinarily efficient at surviving drought. They also store so much water in those thick leaves that they can go months between waterings. For container gardening, snake plants are perfect because they actually prefer being root-bound. They don't need frequent repotting. They tolerate low light to full sun. They handle neglect better than any other plant I've ever grown. Pro trick: snake plants multiply through underground rhizomes. Every few years, you can divide them and create multiple plants from one. I started with 2 snake plants 7 years ago. I now have over 20, scattered throughout my garden and given away to everyone who admired them. So there you have it, 10 container perennials that don't just survive neglect, they genuinely thrive on it. These are the plants that transformed my approach to gardening. I stopped feeling guilty about missed waterings. I stopped stressing about vacation care. I started enjoying my garden instead of treating it like another demanding chore. The secret nobody tells you is that the most beautiful, low-maintenance gardens are often built around plants that prefer to be left alone. Your job isn't to hover and fuss. Your job is to choose the right plants and then step back and let them do what they evolved to do. If this video helped you rethink container gardening, smash that like button right now. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who need this information. Subscribe if you haven't already, because I'm releasing practical, honest gardening content every single week. And drop a comment telling me which of these 10 plants you're most excited to try. I read every single comment and I love hearing about your gardening journeys. I'm going to see you in the next video, where I'm covering the 5 biggest mistakes that kill container perennials and exactly how to avoid them. Trust me, you don't want to miss that one. Until then, get out there, plant something tough, and stop feeling guilty about a little healthy neglect. Your plants will thank you for it.